the rich, the powerful, the wealthy. There's no punishment for any wrong that might be done now after your death. We have one life, we're living it now, it's to be enjoyed now, it's to be used now, because that is all there is. I submit to you that there are no gods, and that our society, people as individuals, would be happier and actually better off with no belief in gods, but acting on the basis of reason, evidence, recognizing our common humanity, and working for love, freedom, and peace. Thank you.
Right, so you've now heard both arguments from both speakers. Each speaker will now be given 8 minutes each for a rebuttal to counter the argument of their colleague. So Hamza and George would like to come up first.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you, Philip Nathan, for that very interesting sermon. Basically, I'd like to add this. A lot of what Philip Nathan has said has just been statements. We have to be very careful. It's called the Obama effect. Obama has a beautiful smile, mashallah, very handsome, dark man, tall. He has his look, he has his eloquence. However, some of the things he says are just statements. Change is going to happen. Change we're going to believe in. Okay, an irrational human being who thinks the Quran tells us to think would say, fine, what has he just said? Just a statement. But how are we going to get change? How are we going to change the world? He's not saying much. He's just creating emotion in the masses. I think that's what Philip Nathan has done. For example, he says, there is no God, there's no evidence, there is no hell, there is no heaven. He hasn't substantiated any of his claims with a philosophical premise, scientific, rational, or whatever the case may be. So when we make statements in a debate, we must bring them back with evidence. As the Arabs say, Aina dalil? Where is your dalil? Where is your evidence? So just to come and sermonize, and I'm not saying this in a patronizing way, I'm just saying it more of a way to improve your next debate, which is we shouldn't sermonize with the people. This is not khutbah, we're not going to be a khatib, we're going to have an intellectual discussion. When we make a statement, provide some evidence. Similarly, I thought I brought a very positive or cogent case for the existence of God. And you didn't address any of these issues. Does that mean you believe in what I said to be true? Therefore God exists? Let me just quickly go through some of his points. First point is the one that really gets up my nose. Yeah? Humanism is living a good life without God, and humanists are very happy and they do charitable work. Well, according to rational academic evidence, if you go into the sociological evidence of what's been happening in the past 20 years, you would see that people who do not believe in a religion are less happy, less healthier, and die younger. Did you know this? So humanism is the religion of irreligion, and it has failed human beings. For example, in 2001, Schnittke, in the Journal of Scientific Study and Religion, examined a data set of nearly 3,000 adults from the general population, and he found religious involvement had no significant relationship with depression. So you're more depressed if you're not religious. He also found that religiousness was a buffer, was a protection against mental distress. And adults who were religious showed signs of less worry and fewer symptoms of depression. For example, in 2002, Smith, McCullough and Paul, in the Journal of a Meta-Analytic Review of Religiousness Depression Association, Evidence for Main Effects and Stress Buffering Effects, carried out an analysis of over 200 social studies and found that high religiousness, being more religious, predicts a lower risk of depression, lower drug abuse, and fewer suicide attempts, in contrast to the humanist tradition. We have so much evidence here, even to do with charity, altruism. Thank you. Altruism, giving charity. Humanists don't have a monopoly on giving charity. According to the rational academic evidence, not just hearsay and statements, religious people give more in charity than non-religious. For example, in 2000, political scientist and Professor Robert Putnam surveyed 200 volunteer organizations, and it showed there was a positive correlation between religiosity and membership of organizations. And there's so much evidence in the sociology of religion. If we see in the current academic research since the 1990s and onwards, we see that being religious, more happy, you die later, you're more healthier, less mental stress and worry. So I would argue that humanism has a very bad case for humanity. The second point that he made was that reason is the basis for humanism, but what he said today was just statements without any reason behind those statements. Secondly, he was saying that one of the biggest arguments, the problem of evil. If a good God exists and evil exists, therefore a good God can't exist. But there's an assumption here. The assumption is that God doesn't have good enough reasons to allow evil. That's the assumption. God does not have good enough reasons to allow evil. But he does. If we can prove that God has good enough reasons to allow evil, then the argument fails. And I would argue, what are your definitions of good and evil? We just discussed you need God to have good or evil as an objective meaning. Without God, it's just subjective. So what do you mean by good and evil? Secondly, we believe that happiness is not the primary objective. That is the assumption amongst the humanists. For us, the worship of God is the primary objective. And goodness is one of the results of that. So it's not preventing evil is the most primary objective. Secondly, we know God created us for a test. That's one of our objectives, one of our maqsad, the maqasid, the objective of Islamic law, to create us for a test for eternal happiness. Secondly, having hardship allows us to understand who God is. So when God says He's the healer, we know God because He heals us if we are ill. Ill may be perceived as suffering, but by having suffering we understand God, which is greater to us than the perception of good. Secondly, suffering allows second order good. For example, first order evil is pain and suffering. First order good is pleasure. But second order good, a higher good, such as being courageous, you require someone to be a coward for the contrast. So to have greater good, you need evil. And there's so many other aspects to prove that God has good enough reasons to permit evil. But I would argue emotionally, what would you rather have? An atheist view where there is evil and suffering and at the end there is no justice and there's no eternal bliss? Or a godly view where there's even suffering for your test to come closer to God and you get an endless reward? And the people of paradise, what do they say? They say as if the pain in dunya was nothing, the pain in the world was nothing, and we have eternal bliss. So what do you want, the dark world of atheism or the positive world of theism, someone who believes in a God and a religion? And you talk about the tsunami. According to the humanist view, those who drowned in the tsunami are just dead and they suffered. According to the Muslims, those who drowned in a Sahih Hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they are martyrs. They are with the Lord and they're having eternal bliss. This is such a positive case for religion, whereas the atheist humanist view is very dark. And also the other question, which is that you need evidence, physical evidence for everything. No, you don't. Prove to me, Philip Nathan, that your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother was alive, or she exists. You can't do that physically. You don't know where her grave is. You can't get any DNA samples. The only way to prove that she did exist is because you are here today. It's a rational concept, not naturalism. Everything requires physical evidence. So that premise is also flawed. Secondly, about the Greek Orthodox Church, I'm actually Greek, by the way. I look Pakistani, but I have Greek DNA somewhere. I look Pakistani, tic-tac. The point is, I'm actually Greek. I converted to Islam, alhamdulillah, 7 years ago. And the Greek Orthodox Church is a bit false. Actually, there's about 1 million Muslims there who are allowed to practice the religion. They're not assumed to be Greek, therefore Christian. There's actually Greek Muslims there. But I converted to Islam anyway. And then you claim about submission. I know I've got 1 minute left. Submission. Submission is a bad thing. But everyone submits to something, everyone has a reference point. It's either yourself, your ego, philosophers, other books, other people, your experience, or God. Now what is more rational? To refer yourself to something that is higher than you, greater than you, more experience, more knowledge, more understanding, more wisdom, or to refer to yourself something which is creation? The most logical thing is to submit yourself to the Creator because it's much better.
That's the last point.
Last point. And just to conclude, he has to address my arguments, which he hasn't in any shape or form. Please, Philip Nathan, address my arguments so we can have a fruitful discussion. Jazakallahu khairan.
So that was the rebuttal for Hamza. Now it's 8 minutes for Philip Nathan to respond to that.